In this video I'm going to show you some useful things for your shop, but I thought I'd start by giving you a little tour of my shop so you can see how much I've got packed in here in a very small space. It's been quite an art to be able to do this because, well, I like stuff. I've got a lot of things here. So, as you walk in my store, you can see I've got, well, some ham radio equipment here, a little hobby of mine. First thing I'd show you is the swivel on this TV here. It's always nice to have a monitor where you can get quick access to the back of the plugs if you need to test something and need to get real quick access. They sell these swivels that are able to go up and down, and can't tell you where to get them, but I'm sure it's not too hard to find. And it's really easy to move the height if you just squeeze here. This thing goes up and down. This is something I recently picked up. I'm really thrilled about it because I was running out of room for all my capacitors. In fact, I had to use 3 plastic drawers just to have the 3,300 microfarad capacitors here. I started out with these plastic things, and these are okay, but they weren't really roomy enough for me. And the other thing, you can't stack anything on top of them or they begin to warp. Same with these units over here. What I had to do here is build a wood frame on top of these plastic storage containers because as soon as I began to stack stuff, you'd see the little bowing occur here, and pretty soon the drawers wouldn't open. Not a good system. So if you can come across something like this, a nice metal cabinet, definitely the way to go. Not only that, it seems to serve better than my toolbox. I really pack a lot of stuff in there. It's just amazing how much room one of these things has. So moving on to here, this is something I picked up at a garage sale, and boy was this a find. It's made by Curtis Industries. I don't know if they're still around, but basically it's a way to organize a lot of your parts. In this case, I've got a lot of resistors here, and these metal dividers are removable. Not only are the dividers removable, but I can pull this whole thing out of here. This is a nice sturdy thing. I mean, it's not going to break like this cheap plastic stuff, and I just love it. Can't get enough of these things here. Anyway, now the back wall here. I go to a lot of garage sales and thrift stores, and whenever I see one of these filing containers, I pick it up. I usually pick them up for $1 or $2. People usually don't want them, and I think they're great for putting a lot of things in. You can see it's a good way to keep your organized chaos organized. So let's see here. I'll give you a view from the other end. Okay, another tip. Sometimes you'll end up with more parts than you know what to do with, and I started out using these little containers here, and they're helpful. You can put a lot of stuff in them, but I'm not crazy about them. I found a simpler way to file parts, and it's simple manila envelopes. I had so many different transistors and semiconductors from over the years that it just began to get overwhelming. So I found you can just take a manila, stuttering here, manila envelopes, and just jam your parts inside, and you can put them in an alphabetical order or by part numbers, whatever you want, and that's a good way to file away some of your parts. And here we've got these slide out deals that go under the shelf here. Anyway, now on to some things I find very helpful that I've been using in the shop. I thought I'd share that as well. So bear with me while I put this thing on a stand real quickly. Okay, the first thing is glue. I'm sure almost everybody in the repair business has had to use glue on many occasions, most likely. And you know, there's so many different types. One that I started out using quite a bit was Crazy Glue. The only problem is the stuff would always deteriorate on me. I could never rely on it to last. Well, I came across something else almost identical to Crazy Glue, only it doesn't deteriorate. And this is the name of it here. I can't even pronounce it. I've been buying it from a company called Miracle Glue, and they get $20 a bottle for this stuff. It's a lot of money, and I'd rather use something less expensive. If anybody knows of anything less expensive that does the job and doesn't deteriorate, please let me know. What I do though, when I glue things together, sometimes I'll want to form a base to put the glue on, because this stuff is pretty thin. And so what I'll do is I'll take plain old black sand that you can find in a sandbox with a magnet, or in this case I pulled this out of the Rogue River, and I'll use this stuff as a base to put the Miracle Glue on, and it works real well. I think the company that puts together this glue, they recommend using baking soda as a base, and I don't like using baking soda personally because it's got a sodium content to it, and if I'm gluing any kind of a metal together, it can be well, sodium promotes rust. So just for what it's worth, something I find very helpful. On the topic of glues, this is another glue I use quite a bit. It's something I picked up at an automotive store. It's called a weather strip and gasket adhesive. It comes in yellow or black. It's very similar to contact cement. It's pretty strong stuff. I usually put it on both surfaces I'm going to glue together and let it dry just a tad bit before I apply pressure. And it does an excellent job. So along the topic of glues, I know there's so many different types, so feel free to leave your comments if you have a tip regarding glues and what works best for you. But on the topic of glues, this is something I've encountered. I don't know how many of you have ever had to seal an RV roof, and you grab a tube of silicone thinking it's going to do the job for you, and you go back a year later and you find the silicone's already peeling off. It doesn't make sense because when you first apply it, it looks like it's going to be a permanent fix. It's got that nice rubbery texture. But I found it just doesn't stay on real well. Well, recently I was in a hardware store, and the gentleman there recommended this stuff here for sealing an RV roof. I don't know if it's that great or not, but I figured I'd take a chance on it. It's called Flashmate, and it's actually designed to glue the flashing to the side of a chimney on your roof. My applications are primarily for RV use, and along the topic of RV sealant, thought I'd talk about this tape here. You know, a lot of people think that duct tape is the tried and true product for fixing anything. Well, my experience with duct tape is sure it can come in handy, but the stuff always seems to deteriorate and leaves a nasty residue on the surface over time. Well, I came across this glue here from a friend that got out of the heating and air conditioning business, and this is used to seal, I guess, ventilation ducts or heating and air conditioning ducts and attics. It's excellent stuff, and I wrote down the number here for you. Only problem is it's not cheap. I think it was around $45 a roll last time I checked on eBay. But, you know, sometimes you need something like this, and I'll show you a little bit about how it works. Basically, it's got aluminum foil on this side, and it's got like a plastic on the back side, and a very gummy material here that it looks like something that could be, you know, up on a roof for years and not deteriorate. I've used it for a lot of different things. In fact, I had to glue something to a wall that had stucco on it the other day with that real rough texture, and I was actually able to push this tape right against the stucco, and it held pretty well for me. So excellent stuff. If you can afford it, they have something very similar for RV roofs that well, let me see, I think they call it Eternabond, or I think Quick Roof might be another product, I'm not sure. So move on to a few other things. Let me see, magnifiers. Now, doing electronic work, I always need magnifiers, and I've been using a jeweler's loupe for years, and I've also got one of these nice little deals you can wear here. And this is okay, except for I find a lot of these are not that well made. The lenses are plastic, and they distort a little bit when you're looking through them. You know, it's better than nothing, but I made my own little device here out of an old swivel cable and a big chunk of steel at the base here. And basically it allows me to look at things up close. In fact, I put two lenses on here, one that I can just unscrew if I need to. And this outer one here is about 10 power, whereas the smaller one is probably 15 to 20 power. Very powerful magnification. And anyway, it really comes in handy when you need to use both hands to do something, and yet you need to get real close to whatever you're working on. This one I can pull my finger back from here, probably about almost 3 inches before it begins to distort. This one, unfortunately, you have to be a lot closer, but again, very handy thing. I also use one of these, let me get back a little bit. I also use one of these swivel magnifiers here. It's got a nice magnifying lens in it. And I switched out the bulb to an LED lamp. What's nice about these LED lamps is they don't run hot. I mean, I can put my hand right on this thing. It's about a 60-watt bulb. I don't have to worry about burning myself. And I found with the old lamps, I was always, I found myself burning myself with them on occasion. And sometimes they would tend to warp the plastic in the stands that they went in. So definitely, if you can come across one of these, comes in handy. This doesn't have the magnification power as the small one that I made, so they each have their own application. Let me reset this up here. I want to do this video in one shot so I don't have to edit it later. Editing takes time, and I want to get this done quick. So let's see, what else can I share with you? Oh, rubber bands, homemade rubber bands. Most of us have had the need for a rubber band a time or two, and one of the problems I've often run into is the rubber bands deteriorate. Well, recently I was just looking at an old bicycle inner tube I had that had some holes in it, and I began to wonder, gee, couldn't I cut this right across here and turn it into a nice rubber band, and wouldn't it be a higher quality than most of the rubber bands I use? Well, I did it. Made a whole bunch of them, in fact. Yeah, I'm guessing it's probably going to last a lot longer than traditional rubber bands. So, of course, the tubes come in all different sizes, so depending on the tube will determine the size of your rubber band. And you decide how thick by the way you cut it. Another little tip there. Now, something I like to do when I'm working on a TV and I've got a million screws to take out of the back of the TV, I've got these nice little organizers. Bear with me for a moment here. These things are great. You know, sometimes you'll be taking the screws out of the back of a TV, for example, and there can be so many different sizes. I've got a system now where I'll go ahead and I'll color code the screws in some cases, or I'll put A through Z, whatever it takes to get everything in a system to where I can put every screw back where it belongs when I'm done. And believe me, it can be a problem if you don't get it right. You can use a screw that's too long and end up going into something that, you know, it could cause a short. I remember years ago a friend of mine found out the hard way when working on an exhaust manifold on a car that if you have too long of a screw, or a bolt rather, you might bottom out before you've actually tightened the exhaust manifold. In his case, he ended up cracking the manifold from heat and not being fastened correctly. Anyway, let me see here. Wrote a few notes of things I wanted to talk about. Tables. That's the other thing. Let me pop this off here real quick. You know, having such a small shop here, I often need to use a table for working on TVs. And what I find works best for me, if it's a real small TV, I might be able to get away with something like this, or putting two side by side. And this is a nice table, and I'll show you why I like it so much. It just quickly folds up out of the way. You can see the way this goes together here. If I need to reassemble it, it only takes a few seconds. And the same is true with these smaller tables here. Sometimes I have to put two side by side. They got these nice fold-out legs. I know this isn't a real great video, but bear with me. Anyway, they're plastic, but they're pretty rugged. Pretty pleased with them. So anyway, I just thought some of these tips must be useful for somebody. So let's take a look at my list here and see if I put it all down. Swivel stand for TVs, silicone. Yeah, silicone glue. I mentioned the silicone caulking. That stuff, not only does it not stick well, but it often contaminates the surface of the, what do you call it? You know, if you're going to reapply glue, it might contaminate the surface. One last comment. Oil for motor shafts. You know, I've had problems over the years, people bringing little devices with motors in them. And sometimes I'll want to re-lube the motor shaft. So I remember one time I used, I don't remember what type of oil it was. It was some special oil that was supposed to be designed for motor shafts. And the guy brought the thing back a couple weeks later, and it had already run dry. And he said he'd had more luck using 3-in-1 than with the oil that I used. Anyway, I think I've said enough here. Thanks for listening. If you like the video, please give me a thumbs up.